It's time to get those pumpkins lit up, dress up as a zombie and watch the scariest of movies. It's Halloween soon. But did you know that before Halloween was Mischief Night, which is where trick-or-treating comes from? Celebrated on October 30th, where children have a fabulous time playing pranks as ghouls and ghosts, the perfect welcome for All Hallows Eve is that, which is where the word Halloween originates. Positive, daring, different we are. Welcome to Kaleidoscope. Today we drop by at the Women's Chamber fashion show Ramp Up. We're in conversation with a physician turned artist, and we are breaking down the impact of war on oil. A massive thank you to our partners Srilanka Live, CDB and the Daily Morning for being amazing. If you like our show, subscribe and follow, and don't forget to press like. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids and EV vehicles.
Here's a quick look at the week that was on CDB Snapshot. Inflation decelerates to 0.8% in September from August 2.1%. Sri Lanka's merchandise exports decreases by 11.8% to $952 million in September, while apparel exports plunge 26% to $332 million. The listed banking sector's profitability is expected to grow at 40% year-on-year by end 2023. Sri Lanka will give visa-free entry to India, China, Russia, Malaysia, Japan and Indonesia and Thailand. Sri Lanka wins gold at the Asian Para Games. Nuan Indika wins the 100-meter T44 and Pradeep Somasiri the 1,500-meter T46 events. Sri Lanka has a new mosquito, a frog-biting mosquito species. Women across Iceland, including the Prime Minister, go on strike to push for gender equality.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. The devastating war in Israel and Palestine right now exacerbates already bad omens set up in the Russia-Ukraine war. The IMF estimates that a 10% increase in oil prices could shave 0.5 percentage points off global economic growth and would add 0.4 points to inflation next year. Right now, crude oil costs 10% more than it did before the Hamas attack. Economist and expert member of the World Economic Forum, Talal Rafi, joined me in the studio for some insights. Talal, we are having two wars going on in the world at this time. What is the impact of the latest one, which is Hamas and Israel, will have on the world economy-wise?
So the impact's going to be a bit large the longer the war drags out. Like one thing is, the first thing is going to be on oil prices, which have already shot up a little bit. At the same time, we're also seeing Saudi a few months back cut oil production by 1 million barrels. So the effect's going to be a bit high. With oil prices going up, there's going to be inflationary pressures back on the global stage. And just when central banks are claiming to have some sort of success in taming inflation and trying to reduce the hikes, I think this might just get in their way. So it's going to have a sort of an effect on the global economy.
Which countries and sectors do you think would be the hardest hit?
Especially countries which are largely dependent on energy imports, like, India, for one instance, China, and especially our country, Sri Lanka. So, and as far as sectors go, in particular, the tourism sector, because when oil prices go up, flight prices are also going to go up. So, especially when Sri Lanka is just recovering and the tourism numbers are going up, this might cause a dent, but only if the war drags out a bit longer and if it hopefully not expands and brings in other players in the Middle East into it.
So there's a double whammy here. We have the Russia-Ukraine war, we have the Hamas and Israel war that's going on. You mentioned oil prices rising. What is the sort of the mid-term to long-term impact this is going to have on oil prices and on countries like ours?
In the mid-term, prices are going to be high because it's always based on speculation. So oil prices, we could see a bit of a being on the increase, but it could get a lot worse. Like, for example, if other players come in, like if the war expands to Iran, which is already being accused of. You know, there's an interesting fact the world many forget is that Iran literally can block off the Strait of Hormuz, through which 40% of globally traded oil goes through. So if there is an instance of blocking it, like, you know, many countries, including Sri Lanka, could experience something like last July, a few weeks without oil, even in the extreme case of Iran being dragged into the war with the US and others. But also, you know, especially with freight charges could also go up, especially as most of the shipping goes through that area, especially insurance rates will rise with the risk getting greater. So it's in the interest of the world that, you know, this is resolved as soon as possible and hopefully contained between the two players, Hamas and Israel.
Given Sri Lanka's dependence on oil, how do we manage these rising oil prices? And also, is there an alternative way for us to get our oil, given that we spend a sizable amount of our forex earnings on oil?
This is a point I always raise. If you look at renewable energy, you know, like solar, wind, hydro, not just Sri Lanka, in any country, it's always within the borders. So you're not affected by global markets and speculation. So this is one area that Sri Lanka should learn a lesson. We've already should have learned it a few years back, but should go in this thing. And the fact that we need to notice that, you know, according to a World Bank report, Sri Lanka has offshore wind power potential alone, just offshore wind power alone, which can exceed Sri Lanka's demand. So if you can utilize that alone, we could be a net energy exporter.
And let's see where oil is heading this week in our market sketch. Oil prices fell from recent highs and moved towards $83 per barrel on news that US energy sanctions against Venezuela were eased and a rising hope of containment among the warring parties in the Middle East. Gold prices moved up, edging closer to $2,000 per ounce as Treasury yields showed signs of softening. Lackluster trading was observed at the Colombo Stock Exchange, with the all-share price index remaining flat and turnover levels remaining low. It's Halloween and Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and these supermoms, the Mombies, dress up to dance and raise funds for breast cancer research in the coolest way possible. A timeless icon in Budapest, the UNESCO-listed Mattered Palace Hotel is back in business. Commissioned by a princess and brought back to life by a world-renowned designer, the palace is everything you could dream of. She's a doctor and an artist. For Dr. Shanali Pereira, being an artist comes from a place of passion and from a place of pain. She grew up in Colombo, studied medicine in the Manipal West Indies twinning program, was volunteering as an ME at the Colombo Military Hospital, and then went off to the UK for her postgrad. Shanali got into specialist training in rheumatology and chose to specialize in vasculitis. But in a twist of fate, Shanali became a patient in her own speciality and had to quit her medical career 1 year short of her consultant post because of vasculitis. Due to this rare autoimmune illness, Shanali's hands often cramp and ache, but she perseveres through. And she's also published a book titled Finding Me Beyond Illness. And on Let's Talk today, I was able to catch up with Dr. Shanali Pereira while she was in Sri Lanka recently, and she told me all about it. You've had a really ironic twist of fate in your life, specializing in vasculitis and then becoming a victim of that illness that you actually specialized in. What were the signs initially?
When it came to my symptoms, the first that I noticed was I got little lesions in my toes, which were like red black blue dots. In England, sometimes for the cold you get these things, so it was easily ignored until the skin died and they became lesions and they ulcerated, and then I had to go and see the specialist. And they just thought skin vasculitis and that'll go away. Unfortunately, it did not go away. I started to get symptoms in my arms and my legs, which was like a heaviness if I were to use it. I couldn't drive, I couldn't see patients, I couldn't examine because they would tire very quickly. But I was telling this to people. There was no visible signs. So it took about 2.5 years since the onset of it till I got formally diagnosed, because I was one of those atypical patients with vasculitis. It's a rare condition and it mimics so many other conditions. So you don't get one thing, you get many things. If you don't line the dots, it takes about 3 to 4 years for you to get diagnosed.
So switching from medicine to art, what was that transition like?
For me, it was like I was going on this fast train and suddenly derailed. It was very challenging for me, both emotionally, physically, in every aspect, socially, because for me, everything I knew had suddenly switched, and that shift in dynamics was something that was very new and very difficult to deal with. So you can only imagine how humbling it was to become a patient in your own specialty.
So do you miss being a physician?
The day I had to give up my training number and walk away, which was in 2012, sort of 3 years after my symptoms had occurred, it was like all my dreams just went out of the window, it was shattered. My identity was my work, my career, so I did not know how to identify myself. So I lost who I was, and I think for me that was, the vasculitis had robbed me of my career, my freedom in so many ways, that on a daily basis it was a battle, because you're on work mode as a clinician, but you're not, because you're a patient and you forget that you are a patient. So there is that vulnerability that I did not know how to deal with. You're helpless, you're looking for others. It was almost like you're on the other side of the bed, and that is difficult.
But why art?
How I found my way back to being a person again is through art. I couldn't control my day, I couldn't control how the illness was evolving, but I could control what I create. But if I drew my pain, put a color and shape to it, it helped me to understand what I was going through and accept things and cope with it, also communicate. So that way, art was a way to find my way back, and I think also move forward with my life.
On Kaleidoscope, we often feature women who are unafraid, undaunted, strong, and land on their feet. And definitely superwomen. Today is no different. A few weeks ago, the Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce held a fashion show to pay tribute to the Sri Lankan woman. It was a fashion show with a difference. Taking the ramp were some of Sri Lanka's top professionals, academics, corporate leaders, and the next gen. None of them professional models, but all modelling some dazzling designs by some of Sri Lanka's top-end designers to place the spotlight on the Sri Lankan woman and contribute to a sustainable project for women-led SMEs. The evening of high fashion created a buzz, and more so because the fund launched that day was aimed at uplifting, upskilling and empowering women entrepreneurs from disadvantaged and rural communities. The show was choreographed, directed and produced by Lo Ching Wong, who also produced the showstopper for the evening, a fabulous creation by Lo Ching Wong, modelled by award-winning film icon Sangeetha Weeraratne. Put on a crazy outfit and go trick-or-treating this weekend. Happy Halloween. We'll see you next week.